I think that's good that the church is not quick to jump on things and to affirm things just because it bows at the feet of production or progress. One, all progress is not good progress, and that we need to be mindful of that. Production is not the call of the Christian. The call of the Christian is to abide.
What's up, everybody? Today we have a special guest. We are excited to be talking about a subject that I think is important. We're going to be talking about technology. Why? Because technology has always shaped how we share the gospel, from all the way from the printing press to podcasts. But today we are living in a whole new world. We're talking about artificial intelligence, which has changed everything. It's changed the way we write, the way we create, lead, and even think. And ultimately, for ministry leaders, that raises some real questions. How do we use AI tools ultimately for sermon preps, all right, for discipleship, storytelling, and are we losing the spirits leading in all of this? How does the church, which has sometimes been slow to adapt and respond to a world that's moving faster than even it ever has been before, how do we address that? So today, we're going to be diving into the relationship between faith and technology. What's healthy? What's risky? And how can we lead with wisdom in an age shaped by AI?
And we got a special guest.
Yes. And we got Sho Baraka. And I know he has some opinions.
I do have all of them.
About this.
Okay,
Yes.
well, before we dive into just the opinions, one thing you did say is that the church lags behind. Do you think pastors, practitioners should be using AI?
Is that the first question?
I'm starting over there, though.
All right, so I'm going to answer that. And I already know me saying this is going to be disagreeing with our illustrious guest.
Okay.
I would say yes in the appropriate ways.
Okay.
All right. Is there no? And that's really what I want to talk about. What are the appropriate ways? So
Yes.
I'm just going to leave that as a cliffhanger, and I'm going to say yes.
Okay. What are your thoughts?
But that's always the nuance, the appropriate ways, and then who discerns what the appropriate ways are. So it's a much deeper. Go ahead.
Well, my question though is, do you think pastors, practitioners should be using?
I think there's a difference. So I don't think we should lump all of those together. I don't think we should lump pastors and practitioners, or even like poets and et cetera, all together. I would say let's work with each entity individually and say, why are they using it? So practitioners, in some ways, let's just say, should they use it for sending out emails? Okay, I'm not going to fight over somebody wanting to use artificial intelligence, which hopefully we can get into a different discussion on what are we talking about when we talk about artificial intelligence. But yes, emails. Okay, cool, practitioners. If I have a proposal that I need to write to get a grant, right, should I use artificial intelligence? That's where I start to get a little more like, I don't know, maybe you shouldn't, but if you did, I don't think it's the end of the world. Now, pastors, I find there's very few things that pastors should be using AI for. And there goes that word should.
We've said about 10 times
I know,
already.
right? And there's going to be a whole lot of shitting.
There's going to be a lot of shitting.
A whole lot
Be
on
shit all over the
this.
place, right?
Yes.
Because this is very important. So same for pastors. Like, is it emails, mass communication that is technical in a way that you're just trying to communicate a message to a large amount of people that is not, let me say,
shepherding.
Exactly. There you go. It's the perfect. That's not shepherding, like, and it's
Logistical things like that.
yes, fine. Anything else outside of that, I find it problematic. Sermon prep, sermons, writing books, writing articles.
Now, would you
can fill in the blank.
put AI and ghostwriters into the same thing?
No, I would not. I would say a ghostwriter is a completely different entity, or even a different a different disposition than I would say.
But it is okay for a pastor to use a ghostwriter.
Yes, I would say it's okay. Now, is the pastor? Now, the technical concept of a ghostwriter is to say that I am writing this without the audience knowing that I've had assistance and help. Okay. Now, in that sense, I don't like that, but I think it's common knowledge that that in certain like publishing worlds that there are certain pastors who, now, there's a difference between ghostwriting and editing. Like, so a lot of what, let's say, for instance, there's a pastor that I know who preaches 30 sermons on friendships, and he wants to write a book on friendships. He's like, I don't really, I'm just going to have somebody just write this book, take my sermons, put it together, et cetera, et cetera. Now, some things, yes, like they had nothing to do with anything from like introduction to conclusion. The ghostwriter compiled the thoughts, constructed the sentences and the arguments. Now, I would probably say people need to know that individual did not have anything to do necessarily with the construction. The thoughts are maybe his, the arguments for the most part are his, maybe not the structure of the argument. However, there's a difference between that same pastor sermons, and he's writing, but he needs a lot of assistance from an editor, and the editor helps that individual construct the argument in a way that is.
So you feel like the editor is
I think a
better?
lot of what we call ghostwriting is just people doing good editing.
Okay, so what if people use AI for good editing?
So that again is for me. So there's a bigger issue here that I think we'll probably get into. I think one of the things we have to understand is what is our theology of body, of humanity. And I think once we begin to dive too deeply into simulation and not simulation, automation. Once we get too deep into like automating everything, what we're doing is, in my opinion, I think we're violating our theology of the body. Mm-hmm. And so that plays into economy, that plays into work, that plays into giving people opportunity to do things that I think, and I know the argument is, well, technology has always been that, but I think there's a greater argument that is much more dangerous with AI than other technologies before.
Yeah, and I think that's the reason why because we went deep really
Yeah,
quick
yes.
into some of the very details of things and kind of come up for a minute because in there, and I was just like, I told you at the beginning, I was like, you're going to disagree with even my opening statements with some of the things that we talked about because I talked about how technology throughout all the way, like the Romans road, all those things that we've used in the past that Christians have been slow to adapt and it was against. But you feel like this is different. Yes. AI is different. And so I want to talk about that. But I also just want to talk about really when we think about AI, because none of us up here are experts. None of us have been to school, students. Like, so just wanted to be really clear that we are not claiming to be experts, but just as, again, to some degree, all practitioners in a variety of different ways, just talking about like what we think ethically is good as it relates to this idea of AI. So I think that's important.
Okay, so then what about the argument, which I have heard, that pastors in particular, but also people in ministry or people who do work with people, use AI and it frees them up to now focus more time on people?
So this is a whole nother issue I have, and so the intent is noble, but oftentimes we couch the intent behind, I think, a very vicious real world implication, which is production. And I think we worship at the God of production, and it's not truly to free us up to do things of the Lord. It's to free us up so that we can accumulate more stuff, that we can till the good. And I think ultimately the Lord made us to move at a speed of humanity. And I think because of technology, because of what I would like to even call, and I think Andy Crouch does this as well, what I would call alchemy and wizardry, witchcraft in a sense. This is really what individuals were trying to accomplish, is how do we in some ways reinstitute the Tower of Babel? And I think in a lot of ways, what engineers with a lot of our scientists are trying to do is to create ways and means to which we can actually be God. And I think that to me is the bigger issue when we talk about it frees me up to do things. Some things you may not need to be freed up to do. Maybe that's part of the toil. Maybe that's part of the wrestle with God, is to labor in the tension of being a human and knowing like this is part of our part in, as you preached yesterday, what does it mean to cultivate in this new garden we live in? And the more we try to remove those responsibilities from us, I think not only does it disservice to, as I said, like our theology of the body, but it does a disservice to our theology of work and how we're supposed to rest.
That's great.
Yeah, I mean, and so I 100%, and I think that there is a sense of like misappropriation and misuse of any tool that is giving. But I think my struggle is to outright say all AI
That's what I'm
because
saying. Like now, so that's why. Let me say this before we.
Mhm.
And once again, I am no expert.
Mhm.
But I'm gonna give a very elementary kind of like 30,000 foot view. So you can think of AI in three different ways. You can think of it as like artificial intelligence, which was created back in the 50s.
Mhm.
Then you can think of like machine learning, which is in humans coding and getting the computers to do a particular thing. But then you have deep learning. What I'm mostly concerned with is the deep learning,
Mhm.
which Chat GPT, the deep fakes,
Mhm.
the chat bots, because now what it is we no longer control the tool. The tool controls us. Think about it throughout history, all the technologies you talked about, yes, they put people out of business in some ways, the printing press, a hammer, whatever. Like you use those tools, but we've never in history have ever been afraid that the tool would actually control us or
Mhm.
that the tool can actually think on its own. And that's what deep learning is. That's what artificial intelligence does. And so now what happens is we actually get to detach ourselves. And there's a lot of research and studies around how AI, yes, it's going to be beneficial and is great, but how it also creates illiteracy, how it actually, I think in my own person, I've not done any research on this, but how I think it makes even creatives worse. So here's my own personal anecdote. And I think there's something to this, and there are books from by Jonathan Haidt, once again, Andy Crouch, and just other research. But my own personal anecdote that I think kind of supports what they've been talking about is when I started using Chat GPT, it made things, efficiency was like, oh, I get to get things done. I can use it as an editor. But I also realized the more I use it, it made me lazy. And I stopped trusting in the Lord. It made it easier for me just to give it prompts, which now is going to become a whole new kind of learning, like a education process. Like, how do you prompt artificial intelligence to do and give certain? And so for me, what I realized, and I'll just kind of sum it up in this maxim: it makes bad writers or creatives good, but it makes good or great creatives bad because it gives you this sense of laziness where you don't actually exercise, I think, the spiritual muscles that the Lord has given you, because now you're abdicating that responsibility to an actual machine. That's just my own personal preference.
What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, I just think there's so many different things. And like if you categorized it in the way that you just talked about, deep learning, I mean, I think deep learning could be a lot of different ways in terms of research versus, and all of that, like just efficient ways to do research. We've been using AI for years in the sense of Google searches is a form of AI
Yeah, but
that
that's
we
not the
had
deep learning.
before.
That's
So
more of
that's
the
why I was saying
machine
like
learning.
how,
Yeah.
so like for me, so like for instance, one of the things that has been most productive in my world as it relates to AI, when I say used appropriate, is what we call otter AI, right? And otter AI is basically the ability. So when I go and I'm on a Zoom call with someone, you always will be on a Zoom call with me, with my trusty assistant, Otter AI. And what I love about Otter AI, right? And I'm not
Satan
even
is busy. I'm just saying, Satan is busy. He disguises himself as otters and whatever other animal.
Cute fluffy. No more of the serpent.
Nobody say that.
That would be
Come on,
that would be-
come on, somebody.
That would
See,
be too
that's what he
easy.
does.
He comes as an
He says,
otter.
"I'm not gonna come as a snake. I'm gonna come as an otter." But go ahead. I'll say, yes.
But so like I show up,
Right.
and it gives me the ability that I don't have to take notes. And now let me finish. I don't have to take notes. I can engage. I can be present with the thing, with the people that I'm talking with, right, and all of that. And what it also does, it gives me the ability to send it to my assistant, right. And then when I send it to my assistant, they can know exactly of what my takeaways were, all of those things. And then finally, this is the third reason why it has been most productive in mine, is because when I go back to Otter AI, like it couches any conversation that I've ever had with you,
Right.
any conversations, like as somebody, and I can say, hey,
So it's keeping track of right and wrong. So I
yeah,
got you.
yeah, and then,
It's keeping track of the summary of the conversation.
I got you. I got
and
you.
it allows me to say, hey, what have any promises or things or takeaways that I've ever said with Sho, in this, and then he can come back and give me here, boop, 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 boop.
Dhati, you make it seem like I am arguing. I'm not arguing against the logical reasons why AI is expedient and efficient. I am going to concede to that.
Yes.
It makes all the sense in the world.
Right.
But like the scriptures say, all things are permissible, all things are beneficial.
So the question is this a gray area matter, or is this a
No, I think it's a gray area matter, but I think at some point we will realize that this is not a gray area matter.
Okay, would you say explicitly that this can sin?
Yes.
Okay.
I think there are ways in which we are sinning today. And I think ultimately, here's my greater issue, is that I think Christians, and I think one of the openest statements where the church can oftentimes is left behind with technologies.
We lag behind,
And I understand that, but I think sometimes that's good. I think that's good that the church is not quick to jump on things and to affirm things just because it bows at the feet of production or progress. I think ultimately Jesus is both progressive and traditional. But I think sometimes we forget the fact that he's traditional because of what it'll look like to the people we feel like we're trying to reach. And if we are this archaic people who don't keep up with the times, then how can Jesus be glorified? And I'm like, man, there have been wonderful groups of people, whether it be Quakers, the Amish, folks who recognize that there were particular technologies and histories that were detrimental to the cause. And I think sometimes the church it benefits the church for Christians to be like, you know what? No, let us not just jump. Let us be like Bereans, if you will. Let us be like Bereans who investigate the utility of this thing, the benefit of this thing, and maybe it's our job to be revolutionary in the rebuking and the revolting against this.
I will say, I worked for an organization. I don't want to say who it is, but they were really big and they were tied to the government, and they did not everything was archaic, everything was old, everything was still on paper, everything. Yeah. And I remember being like, why in God's name won't you update some of this stuff? And they were like, we can't get hacked.
Come on now.
Yeah. All right, come on. But, okay, so first of all, let me just say, and as you know, I'm a huge fan of people like Cal Newport, right? Who talks about his work, deep work, and Andy Crouch. I had every one of my kids.
What is real quick? What is Cal Newport's? I've not know. What is his?
Deep work is.
No, I know his work. I'm saying, what is his thoughts on AI?
Actually, I've not listened to his thoughts on AI, but I do know his thoughts on technology. And technology, he thinks technology is one of this what you said is like it is a problem and it has hindered us from doing deep work.
Right.
And so very similar like an Andy Crouch, like every one of my kids, to no avail, but every one of my kids were forced to read his book,
God or
Tech-Wise Family before they got social media. Yeah. So they read it and then they was like, all right, thanks, Dad.
It's like,
great. Okay.
But that's why Jonathan Haidt, who is not a Christian, when he talks about the revolutionary approach, and he doesn't use this word, but the revolutionary approach to like social media, because his big thing is social media. And he says the only way that we will be able to address this epidemic within school systems is not if I keep my kids from it, but if we as a community keep our kids as a group. Because if my kids go to school and every other child, then they're going to feel ostracized and left out. So we as a PTA, we need to make decisions to say, hey, we will not allow our kids to bring phones to school. And I think in a similar way, the church probably needs to think about what does it look like to have, and I want to go back to this, a theology of the body. Because we cannot control. Now, I don't want to get, and I don't know the technical term, but there are alarmists out there. There are people who are very insulated when it comes, or insular when it comes to this idea of artificial intelligence, like actually creating a jobless society. So within the next, some would say 5 years to definitely, they would say the next 25 years, there's a chance that 90 to 99% of our job market will be gone away with because computers can outperform all of us at everything we do. Think about this podcast. a computer can do all of this. Like
Right.
you type in a prompt, and then at some point it'll
It
be
can
able to
be a
take your
person.
face,
Yes.
and,
No, it
and
can
make
it can do that.
it'll take
Yes.
all the embellishments that we don't like and present us in the ways that we. And that to me is not a proper theology of the body. Like God creates us, flaws and all, and I think that's part of what we embrace. And I think in some ways we're moving slowly and subtly towards this concept that I think we get duped by the simple trinkets that are floated, and then you don't realize you're in the factory, Charlie's Chocolate Factory, getting
Two
sucked up
things.
by the Oompa Loompas.
I used to work in the pro-life space,
Mhm.
and in the pro-life space, one of the things that we saw being created or working towards was artificial wombs, so that
Yeah.
a woman wouldn't have to get pregnant; she could just
Yeah.
use a
Yes.
artificial womb. And I think that the argument was a theology of the body and recognizing
Yeah.
the value of the body.
So they were anti?
We were anti,
Yeah,
of
okay,
course,
gotcha.
of course. But my question is, even have you researched or thought about the environmental impacts that AI is having in our world?
Well, it depends on who you talk to. Some people think they can save us. Some people think they're going to lead to the destruction because of the amount of water that they use.
I would say what's happening currently now, though, is that
Right.
it's
Yeah, it's
very
so you
detrimental.
think about like, yeah, we may not use fossil fuels, but the way in which we burn our water system, our water supply for ChatGPT, they said a simple search on ChatGPT uses like 300 times the amount of water that a search on Google uses or something like that. I look it up.
You guys are out of my, because I don't even know what it means to you water. Like he's like, I'm thirsty. Hold on, I gotta
Because
answer this question.
there's
What
these
does that
big
mean
old. You
to
think
answer?
about,
Like,
think about
I'm
the
so-
Matrix,
okay.
the movie The Matrix. You had these. In order to feed the Matrix, the babies they were like feeding off the human beings. Well, in a sense, you have these computers. These what's the word?
they're supercomputers.
What's
they have to be
what do you call the
placed
things?
somewhere.
The
The tower-
servers. There you go.
right.
You have servers, and they have to run off servers, but they overheat, and so you need to keep them cool. The conspiracy theory is, and this is pure conjecture, is that the Los Angeles fires were started because of the overuse of
AI.
servers being overheated, et cetera, but because of artificial intelligence and stuff like that. Now there's some articles written about it, but I don't think it's ever been proven, but that's some of the arguments. And so that's what I'm saying. Like, so some
There's
people will say
also-
it'll save us. There's arguments out there that are like, there are artificial intelligence safety, AI safety agents or specialists who have an argument is like, we know that they're leading us to an apocalyptic end. However, whether it be 5 years or 100 years is really the debate. That's their argument. Now there are some people who are much smarter than me who don't believe in that kind of alarmist, because the one thing I did, so I attended a artificial intelligence micro meeting gathering because I work at Christianity Today and we do not allow people to use. So we had people come and speak to us about AI, and one of the experts said that if anybody tells you that they actually they know exactly what AI is going to be in 5 years, they don't. They're
Right.
lying because
They
it's so kind of unpredictable.
Mhm.
But we do know that the acceleration is in a lot of ways ridiculous. I mean, they had video phones back in the 70s,
Mhm.
but they didn't roll it out until the 2000s. Now that's the other thing. We don't have the patience that we used to have, I think, as a society because of the angst of billionaires and the incentivizing of getting to something first. People don't have the patience to wait 5 years to roll out the new technology. It's months now. And I think that's part of the issue with this whole worship of production and progress. So, but I would also say, here's the other thing. There's other conversations that I'm not qualified to get into, but I think Christians should be informed on. And I'm just going to tell you to read an article. There's an article. Just do some research on Peter Thiel. Peter Thiel
Yeah.
created, helped start PayPal,
Mhm.
but now he has an organization called Planetaire. It doesn't matter. But he's going around doing a series of private lectures about the Antichrist. And it's very kind of ironic because it's like, he's telling you how to be aware of the Antichrist and how do we fight against the Antichrist, all the while sounding very much like the Antichrist. So it's one of those really interesting
Okay.
spaces.
I was
But
gonna say I have not
when it's people
experienced
like
it.
him who have the actual power to like usher in like significant changes in society and who are pushing and preaching artificial intelligence and using Christianity to do it, that's when I feel like Christians have to be very mindful of what we are buying into.
Okay, I think that that is an excellent way to end this conversation. Is that as Christians, we have a responsibility to not be blindly walking in and making use of things when we do not understand the societal, environmental, spiritual, and personal impacts
Yes.
that these things have. Because it's a whole other conversation about communities who have begged for the service not to be in their space, and
Right,
there's
right,
whole
right,
other
right.
conversations about
Yeah.
school and things like that. So
I guess I'm just trying to figure out like the practical implications, because some of this conversation I don't have know nothing about, because I'm not on all
Right.
the social medias and all the conspiracy. So, but I'm just thinking practically as practitioners, because there's
Yes.
always, everybody has a different line, right? In the sense of, is
Yeah.
it okay to do a Google search? Because like early on, there was, it says stop using, and I've adopted, stop using Google to do your searches and start using ChatGPT
Yeah, right.
as, to do your
I know
searches.
somebody
But who
was
said
like,
that, though?
I know somebody who was just like, just don't know. Stop. Don't Google. Just don't know.
Just don't know the information.
And I think, but here's the
on
other
there.
thing, and I hear you, and I don't know, and I want to, if we can spend a couple minutes on the practical, we can. But here's the other thing: we also have to understand that every message is informed by a dollar. Like people are
Right.
intentionally
Yes.
pushing money
Yes.
towards
Yes.
the progression of AI, and
Right.
so we got to understand there's marketing, and hence, if I were to before I forget this, I love the list of things you rattled off that we need to be aware. But if I were to add to that, and here's the three, and I mentioned these, is that one, all progress is not good progress,
Correct.
and that we need to be mindful of that. Production is not the call of the Christian to be productive. The call of the Christian is to abide. And I think a lot of our theology, a lot of our evangelism is about dominion and taking over. But Jesus has called us to abide. Now, what happens in that abiding, I think, is a beautiful thing. But I think what we've done is we've usurped production and getting things done for abiding. And then the third thing would be is just, what is our theology of the body? And I think there are some people who've talked about that. Now, to the practical point, look, I think the Spirit has enabled us to make wise decisions. I would challenge people to think of all the things Missie said, I said, and say, if you do an honest evaluation of this, do you sit back and do some research, as well? Like, and you sit back and you feel like, I feel without any conviction to my conscience that I can use the otter, I can use these things. And I'm like, hey, do your thing. I mean, that's not something that's going to split the body up. Now, when the machines come and fight us, then you're going to be like, "Show you was right." You know what I'm saying? And so, you know what I'm saying? But it'll be too late.
iRobot
By
type
the
stuff.
time-
because that's going to happen.
Listen, by the time machines are fighting
That's
us,
going
no
to
one
happen.
is
No,
going to
they
be
said
like,
between
show you were
5
right.
years.
But I'm not going to be running back the
25
show to say,
years.
show you was right.
I'm
just
definitely
saying,
not
what
gonna
is
be
the
running the
plan
show.
for getting up out of here?
The plan was that we gonna have to. You should pull the plug before it gets too crazy. That's
Correct.
and that's what I'm saying. Is like at some point here. So I guess the practical is this: is going to happen. What does it look like for the Christian to have a disposition of resistance in the midst? So how about this? I'm gonna take a totally different example. I am a political pacifist. I'm a non-violent, non-resistant Christian. So that means I do not believe in violence in any way, shape, or form. I'm actually moving towards the position where I don't think Christians should actually engage in politics. Now, here's the issue with that. We have government. Governments do wicked things. Like, I can't just hit the erase button and go back to Jesus' day where, the church was completely detached from government. I'm in it. We're in the thick of it. So what do? I live by my convictions and say, hey, here's what I believe. Are there other people who can continue to live a life of non-resistance in the midst of this, I believe, kind of wicked generation we live in? But if other people want to pursue government and try their best to bring redemption, which I don't think is possible, but bring redemption in a way that will bring better flourishing, then amen. But for me and my household, we will choose this particular lifestyle, and I think this will be the best way for me to be unstained from, I think, the world. That's just my own kind of view of it.
Yes.
Well, we asked Sho Baraka.
We
so
did.
it's
We
fine.
asked him. So basically, what I hear Sho saying is, no more "Hey Siri," no more "Hey
Alexa.
Alexa."
I'm
no
trying
more,
to
like
look.
No more any of that, because
about
all that is AI.
in about
so if
6
I ever
months.
hear you say it,
In about,
if
I'm
I ever
trying to
even
get
see you
look.
using, the GPS system. Right? Hey,
You
like
got to
this is
pull
all
out the
AI.
atlas.
You know what I'm saying? Pull out
Get
your
the
maps,
map.
pull out all the
I'm
stuff.
trying to look.
Let's
in
go
about
back
a
to
year.
the 50s.
In about 2 years, y'all gonna catch me in the farm. I'm
Yeah,
be in
like,
the farm
you'll be
by
hunting your own
myself.
food.
Yes, all of that. All
See,
I
of
will
that.
say there
I
is
don't know if
some
I'm going
wisdom
there
to
with
those
it.
that-
Yes.
Listen, now that we would do. Now, none of us got ourselves together on the farm. Show you were right. Can we come to the farm?
No, listen,
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Listen,
Absolutely.
that's what I'm
Everybody
saying.
come.
As long as I got a place
Come
to go,
on, come on,
if
ye.
it all turns bad,
Come all ye.
I'm going.
But once y'all, the latecomers, unlike Jesus, there is going to be a hierarchy. We're going to structure this thing according to who came first. Okay.
All right,
Yes.
well,
Awesome.
there
Well,
it
thank
is.
you, Sho. Thank you for giving us something to think about.
Amen.
I think it was good. I think it was a great conversation.